The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you and welcome everyone to this episode of Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I'm Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design. I've been designing beautiful landscapes for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me across Zoom is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I was having a sip. Good evening, Joanne. Welcome, everyone. I'm Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media, email, or phone call.
That's right. And we want to thank everybody for joining us on the live recording of Down the Garden Path here every Monday night. But remember, you can always check out past shows of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app. While you're there, please don't forget to subscribe so you will be notified of new content. And we always like that. We want you to know when we have a new show, don't we, Matt?
That's right. And speaking of new shows, it's a new month.
It is.
Here on Down the Garden Path. And this month, we're talking with garden authors. So we have some interesting and informative titles lined up to explore with you and their author this month. Tonight, we head to our bookshelves to take a closer look at growing figs in cold climates. 150 of your questions answered by author and fellow radio personality here on realityradio101.com, Stephen Biggs. So if you have a question, perhaps you grow some figs or have some questions of your own for Stephen about any of his books, we'd love to hear from you, where you are, what zone you are, etc. Write us here in the studio at instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right. And we want to welcome Stephen to the show. Stephen Biggs is a food gardener, horticulturalist, college instructor, and award-winning writer who pigs out on homegrown figs in Toronto, Canada. He is the host of the Food Garden Life radio show and podcast. His articles have appeared in many magazines, including Garden Making, Country Guide, Trellis, Today's Parent, Edible Toronto, and Small Farm Garden Canada. Follow his fig and food growing adventures at www.stephenbiggs.com. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks, Joanne. Really nice to be here. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Stephen. Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. So we did have Stephen on when we used to be pre-COVID, when we were in the studio doing talking about growing lemons in where you think you can't, right?
That's right.
If I get the top, it looks bad if I get the top. So we're excited to have you kick off our author month about, you wrote grow figs where you think you can't, and you followed up with growing figs in cold climates. So 150 questions answered. So we're excited because I think this is the time of year people are bringing things in or looking for a new hobby and that type of thing, right? So I think it's a good time. And also I think they make great Christmas gifts. So anybody, I was able to give one to my husband for his birthday gift because he's all of a sudden started to appreciate figs and interested in growing them. So that's been exciting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So what inspired you to write about figs?
Well, the first book came out in 2012, and what happened is that I was growing a couple of fig plants at home, and I was doing a lot of garden talks at that time, and I included a few slides in a garden talk I gave, and I had actually taken a couple of figs as door prizes because it was a Seedy Saturday event, one of those events where people go to swap seeds.
Yeah.
I knew the organizer, and she said, "Could you bring some anything to donate?" So I took these plants, and at the end of that show, the person who'd won one of them came up and said, "I could have sold that plant 5 times over." And at the same time, and after my talk, even though it wasn't just about figs, I had a ton of questions. So it got me thinking about writing about figs. And that's how I ended up writing my first book, Grow Figs Where You Think You Can't. And it's just all about how do you grow these things in a cold climate? And it's not actually as hard as a lot of people think.
No, it's true. I mean, I think we all think it's a tropical Mediterranean plant and or like California, that type of thing, right? And the thought of being able to actually, well, what growing it is one thing, but actually it providing fruit. That I mean, even as a gardener myself, I just thought it wouldn't like we wouldn't really get it wouldn't be worth my while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the neat thing about a fig tree is it goes dormant. And when it's dormant, it can freeze and it can take very cold temperatures, not as cold as we get here in the Toronto area, but quite cold. And so it just opens up a whole host of options to keep them over the winter. And I know some people tip them over and they mulch them or bury them. Some people put them in a garage, in a cold cupboard. I even know people who build a frame around them and insulate them. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. And that's the neat thing. And one of the key messages I love to share with people. If you're growing figs, there's not one right way to do it in a cold climate. You need to be creative and find a way that fits your garden and your gardening style.
Okay. And now, as you know, having your own show on the station, our listeners are kind of US and Canada. So zone wise, should we are you speaking to a certain zone? I know, we're 5B. What is Toronto, like downtown? Are you 5B
Yeah.
as well?
Well, I'm north of the 401, so I'm
Okay.
probably very similar to you.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I get a lot of people getting in touch with me from places like New York. Pennsylvania has a huge fig growing constituency. I hear from a lot of people in the UK, Sweden, Norway, Germany. So all these countries have climates where it's too cold for the fig to overwinter, but it's not really that hard to make it overwinter if you just figure out a way to tweak your conditions. So last week I was in touch with somebody in Pennsylvania who was telling me all about his really cool method. And what he does is he uses an incandescent light bulb because they give off heat. So he puts it inside of a metal tube right beside his fig plant and wraps it up in an insulative material. And it goes inside this metal tube because you don't want your light bulb to burn the fabric or burn the plant, but it dissipates that heat, and it's enough on a really cold winter night that it keeps the temperature a little bit higher, and the fig can freeze. It just can't take the extremes.
So is the fig outside? So then
and
he
these are
leaves it
figs that are in his garden.
in his garden. So planted in his garden. And he has metal tubes in them, and then is it wrapped like with burlap or something
And
more?
so, and then it's wrapped with, I think he has burlap, and then there's another. It's an insulative product. I can't think of the trade name for it, but it's something that's designed actually for plants. And he wraps these around, and it holds in enough heat, keeps out enough cold the fig still freezes, but it doesn't go to those really low temperatures, and so it survives nicely.
That's so
Wow.
cool. What a unique way of doing it. I would never have
Yeah,
thought of doing that.
yeah.
So, what about people who maybe don't have a spot outside or like a condo garden? Are they easy to overwinter inside? Do they have to go dormant inside as well, or can you keep them growing over the
Well,
winter?
that's a great question, and there's a couple things to think about. Now, first of all, if they go dormant and start growing again, that's what they normally do. So it's good in the sense that the plant doesn't get confused and it produces nicely. And so that's what I always told people. But then I had a couple of apartment dwellers get in touch and say, I didn't have anywhere to put it. So I get it growing inside all winter under lights, and I'm getting figs. So there are people doing that. Now, as anybody who's had houseplants know, the challenge over the winter can be bugs. So I
Mm.
still say if you have somewhere to put your dormant fig tree, that's not bad, because then it drops its leaves, goes dormant. You don't have to water it, spray for bugs or anything.
Mhm.
But if you're in an apartment, maybe that's the only option. But I got a fun story for you, because I had a guy get in touch with me from downtown Toronto in a condo, and that was just his dilemma. What do I do with this fig plant? And I
Mhm.
said, oh, it's too bad you don't have somewhere to put it and let it go dormant. So on his condo balcony, he got a couple of really big coolers, and he rigged up a way that he put a fish tank heater in them that would go on just on really cold nights, and those coolers minimize the temperature swing inside where his fig tree was. And he was overwintering fig trees on his condo balcony in these coolers with a fish tank heater.
Wow. There you go, Matt, because Matt is in a condo. So Matt, there
There
you
you
go.
go. Yeah,
There we go. There we go.
Where there's a will, there's a way. So is that part of your second book, Stephen? Is because I know you got a
yeah,
lot of questions and things like people were so like really contributed to the book, didn't they?
that's right. So in that second book, that's one of the things I included in there. And all of the questions in that book I got since I wrote the first one, because what I found was people just started sending me emails with all these great questions, or telling me about what they were doing. And I got thinking back to when I was in school, and I remember teachers saying, well, there's no dumb question. And I thought, oh, I
Mm.
got to do something with all those great questions I've had. So that was the inspiration for the second book, the growing figs in cold climates.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, and just that any number of questions in there and from all over the world too, like you'd said.
Yeah, and I had a guy once even write to me in Portuguese, and I don't speak Portuguese, but with Google Translate, our it's limitless who we can communicate with, so we were able to correspond back and forth. So I didn't put that one in the book, but uh,
Yeah.
lots of people getting in touch.
Oh my goodness, that's great. And yeah, so now why don't you walk us through what do you do with your figs?
I'm doing two different things at the moment.
Okay.
So about half of my plants I grow in containers, and so they're in containers in the summer. They're on my patio, they're on my driveway, wherever I can fit them in. And then over the winter time, those go into my garage. Now, I have a detached garage, but I've insulated it,
Okay.
and I have a baseboard heater. And what I do in the winter time is I keep it just around the freezing mark. It could probably get a bit colder. I always tell people with potted figs, they can't take the same cold as an in-ground fig, because those roots are getting those temperature fluctuations more.
Mm, yeah.
So I always say -5, to my mind, -5 Celsius is kind of a safe lower limit for a potted fig. It's not an exact science, but anyway, I keep my garage around the freezing mark, and the dormant plants go in there. I just put them in last week, and then in the springtime I start to bring them out.
Okay.
So that's one way. But the other thing I do, because I ran out of space in my garage, because I had too many fig plants, I started planting them in the garden. And what I do with those plants over the winter is I actually tip them over so they're flat to the ground. Now,
Oh,
the
okay. So now so
idea,
you're digging them up again.
I
Like I think of rose trees. That's something.
well, exactly the same
Okay.
idea. And what I find is I can usually loosen about half of the root ball with a spade and then tip it over. So some of the roots remain attached,
Mm, Okay.
But the thing is, the soil temperature doesn't change as quickly or as much as the air temperature. So by laying that tree flat to the ground and then covering it with mulch, it will survive nicely here in the Toronto area. And so I do that for about half of my trees. When I first started doing it, I was putting over top of them a board and a bit of soil. But then I do a lot of straw bale gardening. I grow things on my driveway in straw bales. And
Okay.
so in the fall, I take those same bales and I put them over top of my fig trees that are laying flat on the ground, and they make a beautiful blanket over top.
Yeah, that would be a great blanket.
Yes.
And a nice
Yeah.
way to reuse the end of the straw bales.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Okay, and this segue a bit on the straw bales because we have had a whole show on straw bale garden. And Matt, you'll remind me of the author's name.
Joel Karsten.
Joel the Karsten. Yes, we've had him on the show talking about straw bale gardens. Do you get your straw now and overwinter it, or do you just get new straw in the new bales in the spring?
Oh, it's a good question. I find the straw, it's more readily available at this time of year.
Yeah.
And especially because people put it out for Thanksgiving and Halloween displays.
Mm-hmm.
So if it isn't a bad idea to buy it at this time of year because it's hard to find at garden centers in the spring.
Yeah.
However, because I was buying so much, I found a farmer on Kijiji who would deliver to me. And that worked
Really?
out great because my family was always fuming mad when the minivan was full of little pieces of straw poking up everywhere. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And since storage is an issue too in your property, then I'm sure that's one less thing you have to find a place for, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Matt, are there any more bales at the store?
We have got very few left. They're
Okay.
all gone out almost. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, when you get there next, if there's still one, you're gonna have to save it for me.
All right.
I think because the spring, because the other thing for me, the spring is there. It's harder to find, and the spring is so busy that then it won't happen. But I'm really intrigued to give that a shot because we have very limited vegetable space, and it's actually my son. Who's the vegetable gardener here? Not quite as keen as your daughter Emma, but he has definitely embraced it. So it's been kind of cool.
That straw bale technique is amazing. It works so well. And I'd say if anybody hasn't tried it and you're thinking of doing it, or if you've tried it and it didn't work, the key thing is to condition those bales really well. And that means you water and feed them for 3 or 4 weeks and get all that microbial activity going on inside. And that's the key thing.
Excellent. We'll make sure we put a link to that show in the show notes so that people know what we're talking about. So that's good. So Matt, you said we have some listener questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of people who have written in. Gail has just written in, hello all. Interesting topic tonight. Any information online with your guest to start us off growing figs? Thank you.
Okay. Gail, thanks for the question. On my website, I actually put up a whole section on figs because I found I was getting so many questions. So on stephenbiggs.ca is my website, and there's a learning center section with a whole area on figs. And I've got radio interviews, articles, and blog posts there for you.
And of course, his book. So I definitely recommend Grow Figs Where You Think You Can't. And that's available on your website as well.
It
right?
is, yeah.
Yes. I wondered because I still like the idea of it being a great gift for someone, especially for this time of year where people are thinking about what to do this. Although I know it goes dormant all winter, but just a new hobby to kind of start. Where do we get the figs, like fig plants? I know you mentioned garden centers in the book and mail order, but is it a certain time of year only for mail order?
Well, usually people send it by mail order before the temperature is too cold.
Oh, okay.
And so there might be a little bit going on now. And then certainly in the spring, there's a lot of mail order. And there's a lot of really keen fig growers sending a lot of cuttings in the mail. You wouldn't believe how crazy people go.
Oh, wow.
So if people are looking for fig plants, certainly garden centers often have them, but I'd say more in the spring and summer. Yeah. And the other thing is, though, if you look online, you'll find fig groups on social media like Facebook. And there's a really cool website called ourfigs.com. And there's a whole community on there of people who post about varieties and problems and issues. So there are lots of groups where you can connect with people with cuttings.
Oh, that's great. That's good. And
Very
share
cool.
people sharing, right? No, nobody shares better more than gardeners.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yep. So collaborative. Go ahead, Matt.
So we have another question. Howard has written in, hi, great topic tonight. When is Steve's fig show on? Thank you.
Okay. Howard, we put a fig segment in our radio show. It's the first Wednesday of every month on Reality Radio at 2 p.m., the Food Garden Life Show. And I have a newsletter that I send out by email. And if you go to my website, stephenbiggs.ca, and I always include a little fig section in the newsletter too with something about figs.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, has figs outshone the lemons? Your lemon book?
I have to say the interest in figs is stronger than lemons.
Really?
I don't know what it is about figs. I think there's this element of people with a family history in a fig growing region,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in North Africa or the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, I've had people write to me about it being in the Bible. So there's the whole biblical aspect. And then there's this aspect of it being exotic. And I think when you wrap all those three things together, it just creates this real fascination with figs.
Mm-hmm. And they are a nice plant too. Like the leaves are unusual. You go through some time in the book talking about like whether you keep it as a shrub form or as a tree.
Mhm.
So not a lot of plants can you manipulate that way.
That's right. And so you can really make it fit your garden and it really looks nice. It adds an exotic touch. I have to tell you about something that's really exciting me with figs these days. I've been cooking with the leaves and
Oh,
you don't actually eat the leaf, but the leaf
okay.
gives off a beautiful flavor. And I've heard people describe it as a bit of coconut and almond. It's a flavor of its own, but I made a fig leaf panna cotta last week, which is like a thick cream. I made a fig leaf granita, which is like a sorbet, and I've made a fig leaf syrup. And oh boy, they're all good. I put up pictures on my social media. My handle is Food Garden Life. So if people want to see what it looks like, but the other thing to think about with figs is there's this awesome fruit, but there's all of this culinary use for the leaves too.
Wow. That
And
is
now, are
great.
all the leaves of all the different varieties and cultivars, are they all equally usable in cooking, or there are some to avoid? And is it more that they're harmful, or is it more that they just all have different flavor profiles?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if there's variation in the leaf flavor profiles. It wouldn't surprise me because the fruit, it's like apples, it's all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
I would say what people will first notice with the leaves, though, is the shape is dramatically different between different fig varieties. And some have these long lobes, they almost look like fingers. And on some, the lobes are much shorter and stouter. So the variety in leaf form is amazing. And so back to your question about flavor, it could vary. I don't really know, but it has this coconut-like flavor that's lovely, and I think with all of them it'll be lovely. So
Oh, wow.
Nice.
yeah,
That is
Sounds like
really
a
neat.
delicious flavor. I love coconut.
Well, and I think it's all your effort to raise them and grow them and work with them that you can, not only eat the figs, but then you're finding use for more of the plant. I think that's great.
and
Mhm.
the other thing I haven't tried yet, I've been talking to a friend who's in the food business, and she was researching the use of fig sap in place of rennet to make cheese, and you can use it to coagulate the milk. And when she told me about it, I wasn't surprised because I'd met an older fellow from Greece once who told me that when he was a kid, he remembered his parents making a yogurt-like product using fig sap and milk. So there's
Wow.
there's one other thing that I still have to explore, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited about the idea.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like fun. So definitely, your name of your show is very apropos, as they say, or
Oh
apropos,
yeah,
right? Food Life Gardener. So that
exactly.
is great. That's great. And some more questions, Matt.
We've got lots of questions streaming in.
Woohoo!
Carla's written in, what got Steve into writing books? That's all. Stay safe.
Well, I was having so much fun talking about gardening and writing articles about gardening that books just seemed like a next step. And so I started with a veggie gardening book, and then I told the history of my fig book, how that started, and my lemon book. I had been toying with the idea of using the same formula on another crop, and then I just met a really cool guy growing lemons in BC in the ground, making marmalade from Canadian grown lemons. And I said, okay, I've just met someone who's really cool. This is the basis of a book. So that's what got me going on the lemon book.
Oh, wow.
Very
That's
cool.
great.
Yeah.
It's always neat to know where your inspiration starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually some kind of external inspiration. Yeah. And
Definitely.
then I did a book with my daughter Emma, and that started when she was little because she was coming around to gardening talks with me, and she seemed quite confident getting up in front of groups. And so at the age of 13, we Gardening with Emma came out, and she's been out
Oh.
inspiring kids to garden. So,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That is wonderful. We have another question. Jake has written in, are figs a good snack slash treat for diabetics? Jake is looking for a snack that is not too high in sugar content. Thank you.
so Jake, thanks for the question. I'm not an expert in nutrition, so I can't speak to it from that point of view. But they are sweet. I can tell you some of them are exceptionally sweet. So yeah, so they're very sweet. I guess I can give you that much.
Yeah, and I think much like dates and some like the other fruits, but the good thing is it's natural sugar, so as opposed to,
Mhm.
added sugar kind of thing. But yeah, that would definitely be something to check with a nutritionist.
Yeah.
John has written in, we love Stephen Biggs. Biggs on figs.
Thank you, John.
Hopefully you did that justice.
You brought your fan club. Yoo-hoo!
That's right.
Awesome.
And Pam follows it up. Hi, love your guest tonight. I listen to Steve and his daughter whenever I can. This guy is the fig expert, in quotes. Stay healthy, all.
Thanks, Pam.
That's great. Well, thanks, Stephen, for bringing your audience to us. So that's wonderful. It's great that we can, the topic is transferable like to different shows. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are we doing? I know
I
I'm
think
like
that's
waiting for Matt's cue. We're good. We caught up.
That's the end of the questions. So yeah, if you guys are at home, if you're just joining us, maybe you're just tuning in to the live broadcast of Down the Garden Path here on Reality Radio 101, we are joined by Stephen Biggs, fig and lemon growing expert, and we're discussing at the beginning of our Authors Month Stephen's latest book, Growing Figs in Cold Climates, 150 of your questions answered. So if you have any questions or you'd like to say hi to Stephen, you can write us here in studio 101 at gmail.com.
There you go. So Stephen, with your second book, like you mentioned, it really came from all the people writing, writing questions and asking you questions, and you saved all those emails. So that was a very smart thing to do because it is a bigger book than the first book. So when what is the most surprising thing you think people asked you or that you discovered you learned from those questions? It's a tricky question. I know.
It's a tricky one. Well, I have to go back to that condo one that I was telling you about. It just sticks out in my mind because I wasn't expecting that. I wouldn't have tried that myself. And the creativity just blew me over. I thought that was really amazing.
And the light bulb one too. You have to, I have to think that's so who thought of doing that and just the risks involved with heat and like so it's
And
yeah
And then another one to tell you about is I heard from someone in Quebec City, which it's cold. I forget what zone Quebec City is, but it's cold. And he was wanting to grow figs on his balcony and inside. And I was actually trying to discourage him. I said, I'm not too hopeful that it'll succeed, but let me know. And anyway, Maurice is his name, and he gets in touch with me every so often and sends me pictures of his fig harvest. And he's so passionate about his figs that he set up lights inside. And as it gets close to frost in the fall, he moves the figs in, and then there's more time for them to ripen indoors too now, because he's got the lights set and it's warm, and he just extends that harvest, and they keep growing through the winter. So that really surprised me and delighted me too.
So then his never go, is it okay that they never go dormant?
It's working out fine for him. Yeah.
Really? Wow, that is really interesting. Huh. Because I guess in Europe, they probably, you know, don't go dormant.
They get a cold spell,
They
so
do they?
they
Okay.
do drop their leaves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there are places, I've heard of people growing them in places like Malaysia where they don't go dormant.
Okay.
So it is, makes sense that it works for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, definitely. Hmm. And so how many let's talk varieties a bit too, because I know I learned a lot from the book as well about the common fig that's different. Like my husband loves figs, he's buying a package of Smurga
Hmm.
figs from Costco, but it's not the same fig, right? We can grow.
Oh, that's a great question. So people might have heard of the figs needing a wasp to pollinate them. And in fig growing regions, what happens is there's this little tiny wasp that does the deed of pollinating the fig, and it goes right inside the fig. But the figs that we grow here in Canada are what's called a common fig, and there's no wasp, there's no pollination going on. So if people are grossed out about the idea of a little wasp, don't worry, the figs that you grow here, that's not going on.
Okay. Or sometimes people think like other trees where you need a male and a female. So with a
Yeah,
fig tree, you don't.
you don't. No, that's right. And in terms of varieties, there's a lot. My fig mentor, Adriano in Oakville, when I talked to him not too long ago, was up to over 300 varieties.
Wow.
And there's people on some of these fig boards and groups that just have hundreds.
Okay.
And I got up to about 50 varieties for a while, because what happened is, as all these people started to email me fig questions, and maybe they had a couple plants, well, I'll send you cuttings if you send me cuttings. And so before I knew it, I had about 50 varieties. And my family finally said, "Hey, Dad, enough is enough. We want the garage back." So I'm on a little bit of a fig diet now. I've been cutting back. I think I'm down to maybe 20 varieties. But the main thing is that there's lots. So if you think about apples, we have there's green apples like the Granny Smith. There's Cox's Orange Pippin, which is more orangey, and there's all the different colors, and some are sweet, some are more tart. Well, with figs, it's the same idea. You get some figs that have a beautiful berry-like flavor. Some are a little bit more date-like. I have the one that I really love. Vert has a green skin and a strawberry-colored flesh, but there's others that have almost a purple-colored skin. Some are almost translucent. So there's lots. And then the actual shape and size of the fruit varies too. So there's a wide variety, and flavor, shape, earliness of ripening. There's a lot of different things that will vary between varieties.
But that's all part of the common fig.
That's right. And that's all with this common fig that we grow here.
Wow, that is incredible.
That is incredible.
Really? Okay. All right, Matt, take it away.
Yeah, a few more questions rolling in. Andy has written in. He says, "Hello, a question for Steve. What is the best book that you have written, and why?" Thank you.
Ooh.
Oh, Andy, thank you for the question. I love them all. I guess I have to say.
Yeah, it's like picking which of your children do you love the most, right?
Well, I have to say the book that I did with my daughter has been super special, because we got to spend a lot of time together as we were writing it, but then afterwards doing some talks. So I'd have to say that made that super special for me.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
that would be very special.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Another question. Rita has written in. Hello, love the show. Joanne and Matt, do you folks have any books written? Just curious, you give out so much fantastic advice throughout the year. Just wondering, they would make great Christmas gifts for gardeners in my family. Thank you.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Rita. And no, we don't
No, we don't.
presently, but I have floated the idea past Joanne, and I'm trying to twist her arm.
Yes. And I have to say, Stephen inspired me by all the emails because, the emails that I get on what to do with their garden and the garden maintenance and the different questions, I'm like thinking, man, I should have, like, I don't, you have to tell me what your system was to save all of those. So,
Hmm.
so yes, but I have lots of it. It's not a Christmas gift, but we've got so much information on my website. But yeah, one of these days, Matt will twist my rubber arm.
Yes. Well, and I was inspired too, Stephen, just the layout of the growing figs in cold climates. I loved how you incorporated the growing information with all the figs and with all these questions that tied in, and just it was really interesting. I could see us doing a book very similar, or at least the
Yeah.
layout was very inspiring and
Hmm.
unusual, which was refreshing.
Well, I have to say, as somebody who loves books and who writes books, one of my deepest joys is when I get to a used bookstore and I never leave without a pile of books
Mm.
myself. And I found a book from the 60s, I think, from the UK that was a question and answer format, and it worked. It was a book on fruit. And I remember reading that thinking, wow, this really works for me. It's a powerful format. I wonder if one day I could do something like that. So then, as I was imagining another fig book, I started thinking about that one. And so that was part of how this fig book came to be. But I think the other thing that I really loved with this new fig book is because it's people's questions, there's all of these other voices besides mine, so people don't have to read just my voice. And as you read it too, you can people's voices really jump out.
Yeah, I could, yeah, I had the same feeling when I was reading the book. You could hear the different tones and imagine the different voices coming through as they were asking the
Yeah.
questions, which made it, gave the book a whole other dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, it really did. And a shout out to the first book too. I was saying before we started when we went live that it also has a really unique layout and really easy to read, and like with the headings being in different colors, and I really found it really enjoyable. So so because I'm it can be if there's too much information, sometimes you can be like just a skimmer, right? Like where's the
Hmm.
information about pruning? Where's the information about the light? That type of thing. And I
That's
think
right.
there was no skimming necessary. Like it was very easy to find what you were looking for. So definitely think it's a great option for beginning gardeners or established gardeners. I think it's a great. They're both great books. So thank you for sharing them with us tonight. We're really excited to have you kick off like we said, our author month this month.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any other
Right.
questions, Matt?
We got two more.
Excellent.
Juanita writes in, how big do fig trees get? Thank you.
Oh, the good question, Juanita. Well,
Mhm.
so I should say that they'll get 20, 30 feet if you let them. They'll get to be full-size trees in a warmer climate. But here in a cold climate, the neat thing is, as the gardener, you control how big they get. And so I keep most of mine to about 6 feet high, and that means that I can move them through a doorway.
Okay.
So size, you're in control.
Okay. So you make you turn most of yours into trees then, as
Yeah,
opposed to
I've been
shrubs.
making a lot into a tree form because I like the look of that. But
Hmm.
if you make it into a shrub, there is actually more possible fruit because you have more branches, so there's more possible fruit. So there's advantages either way.
Okay.
And what time of year do you do this pruning and the shaping of your figs? Is there a better time than not?
Most of them I prune now as I'm putting them into my garage. And the ones in the ground, I prune them in the spring. I wait to see if there's any winter dieback because they're outside. There's a little bit more risk of dieback. And then I prune them at that point. And then the neat thing is that once you prune them, you've got all that wood. You can make cuttings and grow fig trees for all your friends and trade.
Now,
Nice.
how long from a cutting to a fruit bearing for the impatient gardener?
Well, okay, so the neat thing is a fig cutting, because you're taking a cutting from a mature plant, the wood for that cutting is actually mature. So you don't have to wait for it to get out of a juvenile stage, and it'll try to make fruit sometimes right away. I've seen a 6-inch fig plant trying to grow a fruit. And what I do actually is I'll pinch those off because you want the plant to put its energy towards growing a bit bigger first. But they'll fruit when they're quite small.
Wow, that is really neat. Yes, as for the impatient gardeners out there, I'm sure there's more of them than me, right? Because to know that you're buying something and it's not going to, have figs for 5 years, that takes the level of commitment, right? But to know
Yeah.
that they actually produce. One of the things that really was surprised by was that you can get 2 crops potentially out of your figs.
Oh, yeah, this is really great. So not all varieties, but many common fig varieties will put out an early crop on the wood from last year, sometimes called the Breba crop. And then they'll put out another crop on the current year's growth. And that crop will ripen usually September, October. And so I highly recommend people pick a variety that has the early crop because in our climate here in Southern Ontario, season length is one of the biggest limiting factors.
Okay.
And so you want a variety that ripens in good time. But if you have that early crop as well, that's really great.
Wow, that is great. So, and then that's why you do the pruning in the fall, because if you pruned in the spring, then you would lose.
Well, and it brings up a good point, Joanne, because if you have a variety that gives you that early crop, you want to make sure you got to remember that everything you're pruning off in the fall is potential figs for the next year. So you don't want to prune back every branch tip. And I aim for the rule of maximum of about a third of the plant at once.
Okay. Yeah. Just like our hydrangeas, right, Matt?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
One
So,
third.
which we recommend for most shrubs, we recommend a third every year to do a third. We often talk to people about, not just trimming the outside, but to actually get inside your shrub and to take out a third so that you had new growth. So really, transferable skill that we're talking about for a while that you can transfer to your fig growing.
For figs, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you do have pictures, which is lovely, right? In the
Yes.
book of how
Yeah.
to do it. So it's really great. So, and I love that you were recommended just using plastic pots too, because I know those, as someone who just put away 3 or 4 ceramic pots of my tropical house plants this past weekend, they are heavy and they are, a lot of work to kind of maneuver and clean out and then find a place to store them.
Those are heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes me think of an interesting consideration for people. Now, the bigger the plant, the more possible figs. And so I've had people show me their figs in half barrels, which, because of the size, can produce a whole lot of figs. But just like your terracotta pots, moving those around is no fun.
Yeah.
And so, a great idea that I've seen is people will put their figs growing in big pots or half barrels right on a dolly. And so that in the fall, they can just wheel it right into the garage.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. That is great. I wouldn't have room to plant them in my garden, but I like the idea of on the patio. So that's always good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so Matt said the questions are flying in.
I was going to say, I'm going to jump in, or we're not going to get to these listener questions. We've got Claudette has written in. Hello, I love your show, and I love to listen to Stephen's show as well. Fantastic guests on both shows, and I have learned so much about gardening. Thanks for the advice. It is amazing, and it's all free. What a Christmas gift. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Claudette.
Thank you, Claudette. And Dawn writes in, hello, big fan of Steve's. I have 2 of his family's books. Any speaking engagements planned for this spring if COVID lets up? Thank you.
Hi, Don. Well, thank you very much. And I don't have anything booked yet. No, everything's a little bit slow to get organized. So nothing at the moment. But if I do, I've been starting a page on my website with my upcoming talks. So I will be putting them up there if anything comes along.
Are you doing any virtual talks at all, Stephen?
I'm doing a virtual talk for Landscape Ontario Congress in January. And that's the
Excellent.
trade show for the landscape industry. and it's about edibles in the backyard, working edibles into landscapes, because that's just a big passion of mine, making
Oh,
landscapes edible.
yeah.
And so that is one virtual talk coming up. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And I have
Very
to
cool.
say, as a landscape designer, I know Matt's got more questions, but that is, back when I started, I mean, no one talked about vegetable gardens. No, they even more, it was the opposite of like, oh my gosh, we just bought this house and it came with a fruit tree. What do we do? How do we get rid of the fruit tree? But it's
Ah,
completely in 12 years turned around, and I would say, I can honestly say pretty much every garden they've asked me where they could put it, if they should do it. We've talked, a lot of people, space or little children, they, end up choosing to use containers, I recommend, or leave space in a garden. So it is, or I'm designing spaces for raised beds. And how to display them beautifully or uniquely in more like kitchen gardens and in designs. I've designed several of those. So yeah, it's definitely that's a great, and adding figs and fruit is definitely something I want to learn more about. So I think that's great.
that's great that it's changed so much in such a short time.
Yeah, it really has. Okay.
So Kim has written in, hi, love Steve's books and knowledge. Joanne and Matthew, please, all in caps, write a book as well. It would be such a great seller. Thank you all. Kim.
Oh, thanks,
I
Kim.
agree. I agree.
Thank you, Kim. Laura writes in, are growing figs expensive? Thank you.
That's a
Well,
good.
oh, it's a good question, Laura. So the thing is, I would say your plant cost, if you're looking for a full-sized fig plant, might be your biggest cost. But if you can get cuttings from somebody, then there's your biggest cost gone. And
Mm,
I find generally gardeners are a very generous group of people.
mm-hmm.
So if you can find somebody growing figs, most people who grow figs know how to make more fig plants and take deep
Mhm.
joy in sharing those around. So I'd say that would be the avenue to take to keep your costs down.
And from the garden center standpoint, Matt, do you know what does an average, you know, plant at a garden center? Put you on the spot there.
No, that's okay. Now I have to go all the way back to the spring. Usually anywhere from depending on where you get, and again, the pot size, anywhere from the 24.99 to the 39.99
Okay.
range. And that's in Canadian dollars for our US listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's good. Like, I mean, that's a tropical house plant, right? That's buying a mandevilla,
right. It's a
that kind of
specialty
thing.
item. And it's
Yeah.
not very small either. The figs, usually the smallest pot is usually a 1 gallon, 6 inch rim. So you're usually getting at least an 8 to 12 inch plant
Hmm.
to start. And then some of the bigger ones, which is the higher end, the $40, they can be even bigger or a little bit more bushy and well branched. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. That's good. So yeah, so it's a reasonable, hobby to start, especially if you can get cuttings, like you said, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, Stephen, feeding your figs? Is there any fertilizing or food that you would recommend for our listeners?
Well, so my approach to feeding plants in the garden is just to keep it pretty simple, because the thing with fertilizers is there's so many out there. And I
Mm,
think as gardeners, it's you could go out and you could buy one for your orchids, one for your cedars, one for your tomatoes, one for this, one for that. So
mm-hmm.
my advice to people, and what I do myself, is I just buy a general purpose feed, and then I just use that. So that's what I do with my figs. Now, having said that, I know some people swear by rabbit manure mixed in with the soil. Other people swear by a tomato feed. So in a way, it's kind of like, when you're cooking tomato sauce in the kitchen, everybody has their own recipe. I think with feeding
Uh-huh.
figs and a lot of plants, everybody has their own take on it. But personally, I think I like to keep it simple and not have a bunch of things around. So general purpose feed is my advice.
And is organic versus
I was just going to say,
synthetic? I know, Matt, I just robbed you from that question, but
I was just
organic
like,
versus synthetic. We often promote organic here as much as possible, but we're getting garden and lawn questions. So,
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. And we've actually, because my daughter Emma's been growing in those straw bales that we were talking about
mhm.
earlier. So we've been trying different things. And we had a fish based product one year, an organic one. and it worked really well, but it was smelly. So as you get into some of the seafood based products, you want to think about odor. We
Mm-hmm.
used pelletized hen manure the one time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was easy to use and worked nicely. So I think there's a lot of really good organic type of products. So for sure, for sure, for
Okay.
sure.
Excellent.
Sue has written in, hello, Steve. Is there any advice that you could share for a would be up and coming writer that wants to write a book? Any tips and tricks to do it successfully? Thank you very much, Sue.
Oh, Sue, I love that question. And so
Mm-hmm.
my first book on veggie gardening, I did with a Donna Balzer, who's a Calgary horticulturist, and I joined the Garden Writers Association. And I went there hoping to meet somebody doing what I aspired to do. And I met Donna, and I actually interviewed her for a journalism course I was taking. And one day she called me up and she said, "Do you want to do a book together?" And I was
Mm.
just blown over. I was so happy. So I guess my top piece of advice would be, if there's a writers group or a communication group in your niche that you want to write about, then join it and network and meet people. And those people will help. I find my garden writing circle is the most generous group of people. And without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And if people are looking to write gardening books, the garden writers group I joined has been renamed Garden Com, Garden Communicators International. But there's groups for every niche. I used to belong to a farm writers group. There's food writers group. There's garden bloggers group, and I know Joanne, you belong to that. So there's join a group and network.
Excellent. Excellent advice.
Very nice. And I have run out of questions for Steve.
All right. Well,
Well,
that's good.
So a bit of fig trivia for you then.
Mm-hmm.
The cover image, and it's a bowler, a person with a bowler hat. It's actually my face that the designer put in there. But he was pretty crazy, Brian, and he's just so wildly creative. And so that's a spoof of a really famous painting by Magritte. It's The Son of Man, except the original painting doesn't have figs. So Brian took that painting, put my hair in behind it. I had long hair at the time, and then figs in front. So that was kind of fun. And then for my lemon book, we took another classic painting, The Scream, and we worked lemons into that. So both of those
Oh.
books have these really well-known paintings on the cover, or
Oh,
spoofs
that
of
is
them.
great. Yes, yes. So that's good. One of the other things you pointed out in the first book was that the percentage of men that are more fig aficionados. And I know I told you because my husband saw that my neighbor was growing figs, and my husband was like, "You can grow figs here," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So I knew that before I read that in the book, and I thought, well, that's really quite funny. So
Oh,
yeah.
it's hilarious. And so I don't know if I was at an event somewhere, but I was talking about cuttings and trading, and there was a woman in the audience, and she just made that comment. It sounds like a man thing.
Oh.
And then I got thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, such a huge proportion of the people that get in touch with me about figs are men. And I don't know why, if it's a
Yeah.
macho thing, hey, I can grow nicer figs than you,
Yeah.
or what it is, but it's so true.
That's funny. And did you find like what is the age demographic? Like I picture like are the and you mentioned that the Portuguese gentleman, like I picture are they all like Italian grandfathers
Actually,
or
no, there's a lot of young guys too.
oh good.
Yeah. And one guy that I've had twice on the radio show is he's a millennial gardener out of Pennsylvania, and he's just crazy for figs, just absolutely over the top crazy. So there is a whole younger cohort that is
Yes.
really, really into fig growing.
Oh, that's neat. Even houseplants. There is a whole right generation that are just going crazy for houseplants. So
Yeah.
so that is always good to see. And I mean, I think then kudos go out to Emma and you for really inspiring Emma, being able to introduce and inspire a younger generation. I think it's great. I really do. And I think especially with the one thing the pandemic taught us was that all the people that were maybe my age and homeowners who'd never grown anything, and now
Mm.
their kids are growing from a very young age.
My son Keaton is 11, and he can't compete in the tomatoes because that's
Mhm.
Emma's baby. So
Yes.
I said to him this year, I said, "Do you want to manage the fig trees with Dad?" So
Oh,
now
okay.
Keaton is all over the figs. He's the one who looked after all the picking this summer, and
Okay.
he just loved it. So I hope he's a future fig grower. I told him, "You can have all Daddy's trees one day."
Oh, there you
Oh.
go. That is great. That is great. No, I think there's so much, whether you want to just have a general vegetable garden in your yard, or whether you want to focus on growing something specific, like Emma with her tomatoes and you with your figs. I guess me and my hydrangeas,
Mm.
like whether it's ornamental or whether it's food producing. I know raspberries. So we were able to, on a whim, because we don't, our backyard is all patio and has a pool, and we have an 18-inch, that 18-inch strip that's between the pool and the fence.
Yeah.
When we bought the house, it came like that. And it was, I did it all river rock with ornamental grasses. And it was one day, my son he's 23 now, he's 19 at the time. And he's like, Mom, can we get rid of all that ornamental grass and make it a vegetable garden? And I'm like, that those river rocks come up like one at a time, right? Like they went down by the wheelbarrow, but when you have to take them
Oh,
all out one at
yeah.
a time. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And he did. He took all of them out. He repurposed them in different areas in my front garden and planted. And because it's so narrow, we learned. I was on a garden tour and people were growing, and this lady was growing clematis from chains. She had chains hanging from her soffit,
Oh, wow.
and the clematis were climbing up the chains. So we have hung chains on the fence so his cucumbers climb the chains. And so that has helped, right? Because otherwise you couldn't like walk past the pool. But yeah, so it's been, hits and misses, and always as usual with the seasons, right? I had a client gave me I was at a landscape design, and she had a whole garden full of walking onions. So she's like, did you want a couple of these? And so now we have a whole patch of these walking onions who accidentally trimmed back to the spring. And my
Oh,
son was
no.
like, our walking onions are no longer walking, Mom. Like, what did you do? So it's kind of funny. So yeah, there's,
Mm.
it's an adventure. And I think that's the cool thing. As opposed to my regular ornamental garden, it changes a little bit from year to year, and you lose a plant, you gain a plant, that kind of thing. But I think the thing about the food is it's been very unique every year. And I started off on the raspberry bush. We weren't sure that would survive, and it did survive in a pot in the backyard with no protection, and we had more raspberries than we've ever had. So,
That's great.
hmm yeah. So Matt, why don't you take it away? Where yeah, the time always flies, right, when we're having fun. So thank everybody for listening, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you again for joining us on the show. Always a wondrous adventure with you.
I can't see the time. So
Really
there, yeah,
enjoyed
you're
it.
telling me we need to wrap up, and I'm like, we still have time.
We've got under 3 minutes to
We
go.
do. That's right. That's
We
right.
do.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, not that second, but yeah. And just as we finish off, Irene is writing in. She says, hello, I'm a first time listener from Miami, Florida. Just wanted to check you guys out. Thanks for having a show. I love gardening, Irene.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
great. Thank you
That's a
for
nice note,
listening.
Irene.
Yeah, that's great. I guess they can grow figs no problem in Florida, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people have fig questions, you can email me through my website, stephenbiggs.ca. I'm happy to help you out. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. So your website, and do you want to give everybody else your shout out to your other social media handles?
Yeah. So the website it's stephenbiggs.ca. And on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it's Food Garden Life is the handle. And
Okay.
would love to connect with you there.
Excellent. And you did mention your newsletter, as well as if you want to purchase one of Stephen's books, they're all available, all of them, including Emma's, Stephen?
Including Emma's. And if people are doing this as a gift for the holidays and it's for somebody else and you want an inscription, I'm happy to do that. I love to do that. Just send me an email after you make the purchase and say, I just ordered a book. Can you put a note and tell me what you'd like me to write? I'd be delighted to do that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And do you want to give a shout out to Emma and her website and some of the
Yes.
stuff she's doing there?
And so my daughter Emma, who had 120 tomato varieties the last couple years, her website is emmabiggs.ca. And on Instagram, she's just doing great stuff with pictures. It's Emma Biggs _grows. And we've got a friendly rivalry going. We started Instagram at the same time. She's got twice as many followers as me, and she keeps giving me lessons saying, you know, Dad, you didn't do that right. Here's what you got to do next time.
Oh, there you go. That's great. Well, it's wonderful for teaching all of us how all the different varieties that you can grow of tomatoes, and inspiring kids to eat their vegetables too, right?
Yeah. And so she will have some seeds up for sale coming up soon. If people are into really cool, unusual tomatoes, she's going to be selling seeds this year. So how's that? A 15-year-old with a tomato seed business. So
that is wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is great. So yes, everyone, please check that out. And we'll make sure we put all those links, Stephen, in our show notes as well. So everybody can go on the website and take a look.
That's right. Thanks again, Stephen, for joining us here on the show. A pleasure as always. Thank you, Gail, Howard, Carla, Jake, John, Pam, Andy, Rita, Juanita, Claudette, Dawn, Kim, Laura, Irene, Beth, and Mike for all of your questions this evening. We love your questions. Thank you, everyone else, for tuning in. Thank you for downloading the podcast. And thank you for tuning in to here, Down the Garden Path Live on Reality Radio 101. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.